Hello everyone, and welcome back to another tutorial video. And in today's video we're going to be going over how to draw our anime and manga characters from a high perspective. So this will be nice just for mixing things up in your own drawings. It's great practice, and if you do it right it'll look nice. So if you're working on fan arts or you're trying to start posting some of your art so you can track your progress, whatever your goals are, this will be a really great thing to try to get used to, and it'll really bring some life to your drawings. So before we begin, since we're from a high perspective, we're going to be looking down on our character, and for this first one I'll just have her seated. So since we're up high, everything that is closer to us is going to appear slightly larger than it would normally. So to help us sort of visualize that, I'll start with some ever so slightly tilted lines here. Now these are just basic guidelines. I really don't follow them ultra closely, but it's just going to help me remember as I'm drawing that we're looking down on this character, so I need to just not draw her with the regular sort of proportions that we would see should we just be looking straight at her, but instead you kind of have to change things up just a little bit so you can really get that flow right, and it should hopefully look nice once it's done. So we'll start with our little guidelines here. Then we'll draw a head, and we will give her a generous sized head for now. We'll have her kind of like looking up at us. So we'll give her a simple face, a little smile or something. Her ears here. There we go. Alright, so from there, now I'm going to work across multiple layers here because basically our head is going to stack on top of the ribs, which are going to stack on top of the hips. And so what I like to do to sort of further capture that for myself is give us a little center guideline, and then I'll work across multiple layers, so that way if you have to change the balance of one key component, it's not going to be detrimental to the rest of it. And if you're doing this traditionally, just make sure you're drawing super lightly, so that way any of your corrections and erasing, it's not going to show up in the finished product. So we can do the same thing digitally with just erasing as we go, but to me this is just much easier. So from there, I'm actually going to start with our collar. So because we're above our character, they're going to have kind of a different shape than what we're used to for the collar here. So instead of sort of a flat plane connecting to the shoulder with the traps leading into the neck, since we're looking down on our character, they're going to make kind of like this V shape with the top of the trap here and the collarbone here, and they're going to meet the shoulder around there. So just trying to get the shoulders a little bit even here. There we go. So we're going to make kind of like this V shape coming off from the shoulder here. And then we can add in some necklines kind of wide, because the neck kind of gets wider as it connects to everything. So we're going to leave it out a little bit wider than what we would typically see up connecting to the skull of our character. And we might only see just a touch of the actual like neck tendons. You might not even see them at all, so you could ignore those lines if you want. Just going to try to give this some rounding. So from there, what I like to do is I like to just start. We're going to have kind of the front of the rib cage. So since we're looking down, we're not going to see the entirety of the rib cage. Instead, we're really just going to see the very frontmost portion of it. So I like to make a little mark. You don't want it to be super shallow. You don't want it like this, because the ribs do stick out. We're not super flat. And from there, just curve it to meet the shoulder line. Now what I like to do here once we're actually at the shoulder is I like to add a little swoop at the end, so it kind of is like a shape like that. Okay, I will bring this shoulder out a little bit though, like so. And again, just keeping it loose and just looking for shapes that we like and the overall proportions and stuff. Something like that. There we go. So from there, what we can do is we can put in our character's chest. So we won't give her a huge chest here. Let's do something like that. Remember, the outside of our chest is going to kind of tuck up into this armpit looking area. And from this angle, we still want them kind of hanging down with the typical shape, but remember, they're still being supported by her actual rib cage, and we're looking from the top down. So basically, you know, they're not going to be just hanging down off the front like what we would normally see in this sort of teardrop shape. It'll keep some of that shape, but it's okay to kind of keep it wider and not stick out quite as far. So kind of wide and give them some depth here. And make sure they connect not ultra close, so they're not like touching each other, because unless they have like a, you know, supportive bra on or something, then they'd probably be touching. But for this, just kind of hanging there. So we want them to be connecting rather close, but not completely touching. Just like that. So from there, I'm just going to connect our shoulder line right here. And then what we can do is add in the hips. So from there, I'll make another layer here. Now remember, our female characters have curve in their spine. So, you know, her back, if we're looking at it from like an angle, we got her head, it kind of comes in like this, and then it sticks out, right? So they kind of all stack off of the hips like this, right? So because of that, she's not going to be just sitting straight up and down. So we're not, you know, she's not going to be directly over top of her hips here, but instead we're going to see a little bit of the glutes behind her, like this. So that's her glutes behind her, and then from there we can stack out our legs. And we're just going to do simple ones for now. We're not going to do anything crazy here. So we can put this in like this. Guess I'm going to cut these knees off a little bit shallower here. There we go. And then we can add in some pop for where her calves are. Say she's just kind of sitting on her knees right now. Have her feet poking out back here. Simple feet. Like so. And then from there, we can just add in, we'll have a little bit of her lower back visible. Just a touch. So kind of drawing some marks like so. Oops. There we go. And it's okay to leave her thighs a little bit wide just because she's, you know, sitting down, so they're going to be pushed out to the sides a little bit more, like so. And then we can add in some arms. Again, I'm going to do this on another layer just so that way I save myself some trouble. So for these, we're kind of going to make oval shapes for our joints, because since we're looking down, this is just going to help us map it out. So we're going to see, like, this is the middle of the forearm right there. We can then bend them down a little bit and have the the wrist joint, sorry. That's like the middle of them. And then from there, we can just meet that section. I'll bring these down a little bit. And from here, again, everything furthest from us is going to sort of taper off and look smaller. And so we're kind of keeping that in line with these arms as well. So that's why they're going to be stubby lengthwise. But then what we're going to do is just make sure that they taper way off the further they get from us. So that way it still looks like they're a regular length, even though when we're drawing our character from this angle, we ourselves aren't drawing them taking up, you know, long lengths on our page or anything like that. So we're just going to taper these off. Bring this one down a little bit more too. Just like that. Then we'll just have simple hand here. Not a hand tutorial, so I'm just gonna put in a very simple one. Maybe too simple. Okay, so what I'm gonna do to help myself here, I'm gonna draw a line coming off, because I want these hands kind of resting on the floor. I'm gonna draw a rather flat line jutting off from our wrist here. Then I'll draw my little paddle shape from there. Like so. Then I can draw a little thumb shape. Again, keeping these hands simple, it's not a hand tutorial, but still want the perspective to be right and make it look like she's actually resting them on the floor here. Like so. There we go. Give these fingers some bend as well. Looks a little bit nicer, I think. There we go. Alright, so that just about does it. So now I'll just go ahead and do the line art. I'm not concerned about the quality of my lines here, so we're just basically tracing over the shapes that we established and kind of walk through. So give our head and jaw. Super simple ears, like so. There we go. At some point I want to have like a line art dedicated tutorial, because there's a lot of little techniques you can use, like line weight and how fast you draw your line, stuff like that. That'll be helpful for you guys, I think. But for right now, we're just keeping it simple. So from there, I'm going to draw my collarbones first, like so. Then I'll start at the pit, follow the breast, give a little swoops on either side here. Well, still want this one to be rounded, then it got too big. Better, they're not perfectly symmetrical, so which they don't need to be perfectly symmetrical here, because it's pretty uncommon that people's chests are perfectly symmetrical, but we want them at least close enough that you'd have to stare for a while before you're like, wait a minute, something's off. Then from there, I will give her the shoulders. Just kind of starting at the little crease in the where the bicep and forearm meet, and then leaving it rounded over there. From there, connect behind our little shoulder line with our traps that moves up generously kind of behind our neck here. Got super tiny lines there just to show that she's got neck tendons. From there, just mark out her arms. Again, really tapering them down the further away they get. In fact, this one could be a little bit more aggressive on the taper. There we go. Something like that. And then I'll take this line and I'll make it a little bit less aggressive. There we go. From there, might as well thighs, just kind of make a little thigh line there. And then kind of keep it thick and then swoop it into the kneecap like that. So again, kind of give it a little swoop in. Then we can put in our calves, kind of coming off. They're not going to meet the knee. Oops, I actually, okay, sweet, my line is gone. Well, I didn't want to get rid of it, but basically we don't want it just popping off the knee just like that, because the calf muscle hangs below the knee anyways, so you'll see a little bit of it, and then it'll really poke out just because she's putting a lot of weight on it. She's sitting on her knees like this. So it's gonna poke out. Then we can give her simple feet here. Back there. Just foot placeholders here. And I will actually shrink these though, because again, they're really far away. Not only are they much lower than her head, but they are also behind. You know, they're not quite under like the back of her glutes or anything, but if you bend your own leg, you can kind of see where your feet end up. And so they're not only just beneath us further, but they're also pushed back behind her. Then we'll see just a touch of the lower back from there. Yeah, we can get our hands in. Just super simple hands here. I'm not trying to waste too much time here on a perspective tutorial. There you go. Alright. I guess I'll make these go away. Alright, so basically, kind of balance out my head here. It's a little lopsided. But basically, all we're trying to keep in mind is that when we're stacking our character, we want the head to be a little bit larger than what it would normally be compared to everything else, because the head is going to be closest to us, so it's going to appear larger. Now, of course, the head itself isn't bigger than, you know, her upper body and her glutes, so we don't want her head to be like, you know, this big or something crazy like that, unless you're going for a really crazy perspective, like in a fish lens or something. But for right now, for just a super simple perspective tutorial, just kind of start off this high perspective look, just have a super simple pose where she's just sitting on her knees looking up at us, and you really just want to keep in mind stacking everything on top of each other. You don't need to go out of your way at this angle to try to figure out how all of these can smoothly without lines connect, but instead just treat the head as its own separate part, the upper body as its own separate part, and then the hips and glutes as their own separate parts, and just stack them on top of each other, because every people will be able to fill in the blanks here that we